Hello friend, I want to tell you about the Peugeot 207 car. What engines were installed? The 207 was presented in the year in which the Euro 4 emission standard came into force. All manufacturers were already preparing for the upcoming and restrictive Euro 5 standard, which is why engines underwent a huge metamorphosis at that time. It was in the mid-2000s that technical solutions were introduced that had not been needed before, but were to be necessary in the future. This was also the case in the 207 model, which was to some extent a guinea pig for the 208 model in terms of petrol engines. The biggest influence on the assessment of this car is the new generation of engines developed by PSA together with BMW. Although I dedicated it to the 1.6 THP unit, basically similar problems also appear in the VTI. However, there was no shortage of successful units in the 207, but the choice is limited. For example, the 1.4 engine in 8 and 16 valve versions, with a design similar to its predecessor, was offered throughout the production period. This is a weak unit, 73 and 88 HP respectively, but sufficient. The second successful petrol engine is the 1.6 16V with 109 hydrogen phosphide, but it was only available in the 2006 and 2007 model years. From 2007, a 1.4 VTI engine with 95 HP appeared under the hood, and from 2008, a 120 HP 1.6 VTI. The range of more powerful units included the 1.6 THP engine generating 150 HP from the very beginning, 155 HP from 2009, and 174 HP from 2007. A sporty model called RC, also as an estate car. As befits the early 2000s, there was no shortage of diesel engines. The 207 was mainly fitted with the well-known and refined 1.6 HDI engine, and from 2009 also the 1.4 HDI. Which engine to choose? The real engine delicacy in this model is not the most powerful supercharged engine, but the naturally aspirated 1.6 16V petrol with 109 HP. The unit is dynamic yet economical, simple, durable, cheap to service and repair, tolerates even gas supply well, and according to Autocentrum reports, burns an average of 7.7 L 100 kilometers. This is an older generation engine from the TU5 family with a timing belt drive. Its maintenance is very cheap. Typical faults are mainly problems with the ignition system, coils, engine computer, often resulting from neglect. The problem is that the number of Peugeot 207 sales offers with this unit can usually be counted on the fingers of one hand, occasionally on both hands. If you don't care about performance, a good alternative is a 1.48 volts petrol or a 16 valve with slightly more power. Both variants need about 7 L of fuel per 100 kilometers. They have decent performance sufficient for the city and leisurely commuting. They come from the same family, 2-3, and are characterized by simple construction. There are a lot of cars with this unit in sales offers. VTI engines are distinguished by a completely different design. They have variable valve timing and a chain-driven valve train. Their design is not only complicated but also flawed. These engines often require the intervention of an experienced mechanic, but are also often sent back from workshops with a so-called receipt and the slogan, "Sir, I don't want to deal with this contraption." The first important piece of information. This usually concerns units with a mileage of just over 100,000 kilometers. After such a mileage, problems with ignition, stretched timing chain, damage to the cylinder head, and even the entire engine due to lack of oil begin. The second important piece of information is that VTI engines are not even worth the sacrifice or risk, because yes, they can be fixed, often a cylinder head overhaul combined with replacing the entire timing. The 1.6 unit with 120 HP gives pleasant performance, burning the same as the older 1.6 variant, but if you care about performance and want to sacrifice, it is better to choose the even more problematic but worth the sin 1.6 THP engine, which burns the same amount. The only theoretical advantage of the 1.6 VTI engine is that it was the only one combined with a sensible automatic gearbox, 4-speed and sluggish. But there are better cars in this segment, and with a better automatic. The automated gearbox can also be found occasionally in the 88 HP 1.4, but it is really rare and I advise against such a choice. In the case of the THP engine, the approach to the car is again important, because if it is to be used for everyday driving, the THP always has too much power. and the risk of another serious failure is also high. But if it is to be a car for dynamic or sporty driving, there are many better ones on the market. Alternatively, it is better to buy the RC version with the highest power right away. And in the end, it may turn out that the 1.6 HDI diesel generating 109 or 112 HP is exactly what you are looking for. And so we smoothly move on to diesel engines, which in my opinion do not really make sense in this car. We have to reckon with the high costs of potential repairs, which unfortunately happen quite often in 1.6 HDI engines. This concerns the dual-mass flywheel, more powerful versions, turbocharger, EGR valve, dirty intake, injector seals, timing drive, lubrication problems, etc., especially when the engine has already done those symbolic 200,000 kilometers. Its typical problems are often sloppily repaired, which takes its toll on subsequent owners. It is not at all about the 1.6 HDI being a bad engine, but about the fact that the repair costs can be disproportionately high compared to the value of the car. Such engines burn on average about 5L100 kilometers, which is not such a big difference compared to the 7 to 8L of a petrol engine that the potential risk would pay off. Although if we compare newer models, e.g. 1.6 VTI and 1.6 HDI, I definitely recommend choosing the diesel. I believe that the ideal power source in every respect is the older 1.48V engine variant offered until 2013, or the 1.4 16 volts or 16 volts, but only until 2007. When it comes to diesels, the choice is not that important. Although the relatively simple 1.4 HDI may be cheaper to run than the more technically advanced 1.6 HDI. Typical faults: despite the rather problematic engines, the car itself is not bad, although the change from 206 to 207 has put French cars out of the minds of some people forever. Just as electrics have always been a weak point of the French, so in the 207 model it is even worse. Drivers often struggle with the BSM computer, lighting failures, or the air conditioning panel. On the other hand, as befits a Frenchman, the car has no problems with corrosion, so it is characterized by high durability. The delicate suspension requires frequent servicing, but on the other hand this means low costs. In the 207, there is no longer a beam on the rods at the rear, which reduces the costs associated with repairs to the rear suspension. However, not all parts of the chassis are cheap, because, for example, brake discs are integrated with wheel bearings. However, looking at it pragmatically, one job, changing discs, solves the issue of 2 potential visits to the workshop. The car's problem, as with the 206, is the gearbox, and while in the 206 the problems were mainly related to the gear change mechanism, in the 207 it is increasingly also related to the design of the gearbox. They are not very resistant to dynamic gear changes, so it is worth treating them gently. Thanks for listening to me. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and rate my video. If you know any problems with this car that I didn't mention, be sure to write about them in the comments.